It's a sensational day to fly the drone here. We got nice skies, snow on the mountains, FPV, Mavic 3 as well in the truck. We're gonna talk about ND filters, and I'm gonna make this video real short for some people. Do you need ND filters to fly the drone? No, the drone will take off without them, but in this video, I'm gonna explain why you should have them for your videos and photos. First, I'm gonna get this FPV up here in the mountain and fly it back down, see how it goes. This is the Mavic 3 here. I have 3 different sets of ND filters. I got the Polar Pro Director's Edition, the standard DJI filters, and the Freewell Split ND filters. The Freewell Split ND filters are really cool because the Mavic 3 has a top camera, which is a 7x zoom, and a regular wide field of view. The top 7x zoom has a 4.4 f-stop, where the regular camera is 2.8. So naturally it's gonna be a little darker. With the split ND filter, the top camera is less of an ND. So it really comes in handy if you're a person that uses both of the cameras. I personally like using both. Polar Pro ones are really cool because they have variable stops. They have polarized filters in here. They have a mist filter, and they have gold and blue morphic, which adds like a lens flare to light in blue hour, which looks really cool. So these are a really cool set. And then if you buy the Fly More kit, DJI, it's not the right case, but DJI will also give you a set of ND4 all the way up to 32, I believe. So to get to the question, first I'm gonna talk about photography. With the Mavic 3, you can change the aperture. So it really helps with photography and shutter speed. So you don't really need a ND filter if you're just doing photos, unless you want to do long exposure photos like this one here. I used an ND filter on that and shot that at 1 second. Unless you shot this in blue hour, you're gonna need an ND filter to shoot this in daylight at 1 second. That is one reason you can use them for photography purposes. And the rest of the video, I'm just gonna talk about videography purposes. Technically, you can record video without an ND filter. You put the camera in auto and it will change the shutter speed, and it will change the aperture if you can control the aperture like the Mavic 3. But a lot of DJI drones don't allow you to change the aperture. So in this video, everything's gonna be f2.8, just to give you an example of why you would use an ND filter in daylight. So the biggest thing with video is whether you shoot at 24, 30, 60, 120 frames per second, you want to have that doubled as your shutter speed. So if you shoot in 30 frames per second, you want to do 1/60th of exposure. If you shoot at 120 frames per second, you want 2/40th of an exposure. So just whatever the number is, you double it, and that's the shutter speed you want, and you don't change it at all. Everything else is fine. So I won't use an ND filter in blue hour or the first hour of golden hour, because I can shoot up to f11 and it'll do just fine. But like on the Air 2S, you might need an ND filter in golden hour depending on how bright the sky is or something like that. So first thing I'm going to do is show you some issues that can happen shooting wide open in the daylight without an ND filter. Let's go ahead and get this drone up in the air here. Right off the bat, you can see the problem shooting at f2.8 without an ND filter. There's nothing you can do besides maybe going here and change your ISO. Is the lowest it can go with 400. So if you can control the aperture, you can bump that up, and you can open it up a little bit. We're gonna do auto shutter only. Okay, and that way now it's got a good exposure, but the shutters, look at that, 1/8,000th. That's gonna be crazy. I'm gonna start recording. All right, so when you're flying the drone and you're shooting at an auto shutter speed here, you're not gonna get the motion blur that is desired. And up here, you might not notice it, but also sometimes if the sunlight is too bright, you might get this weird flicker on your footage, and that will be something that actually ruins your videos. So let me go ahead, bring this drone closer. see if I can get some motion blur close to objects. That way you can see the problem. Now I'm gonna fly right past this tree here.
Notice as the image is frozen still that there is no motion blur in the photo. While it might seem okay to just grab a screenshot from this, when a video's shutter speed is so fast, there is a jitter that some people may notice, and it can often give to a headache and unsmooth footage. You want a shutter speed that doubles your frame rate, so as you're flying by with your drone, there is slight motion blur in the photo.
So I'm gonna put an ND filter on and just show you how much smoother it could be with a proper exposure. For this one, I'm gonna do an ND16 because it's still pretty light out, and I believe that's gonna be the best one. One great thing about having a variable aperture is you can be a little more selective with your ND filter. Being stuck at like a 1.7 aperture, you might not be able to use a certain ND filter that would work in other drones like mine. To change the ND filter on the Mavic 3, what you're gonna do is just hold the gimbal, twist this off, and then you can just pull it right off. And we could just throw this on. Okay, we got that on. And now the auto shutter speed went all the way down to 1/400th, so I guess that's pretty close. 1/100th, because I'm shooting at 50 frames per second and 5K. So it's still a little, see, this is the problem if you're stuck with an aperture. It's still a little too bright, but I'm gonna change it down to a proper exposure. And same thing, I'm gonna fly right by this tree. And when you pause the video, you'll be able to see that the tree has some motion blur in it, and it's not so jittery on your screen. So you can see by having a controllable aperture, you're not so limited in the ND filter you choose. However, you saw that if I was stuck at 2.8, I would have had to choose an ND32 and hope that would have been good enough. Let me show you these ND filters. These are the Polar Pro ones, and one great thing about these ones, and other companies make them as well, is they have variable NDs. So if you can't control the aperture, you can control the ND without having to switch every single time. You can just bring the drone back to you and just rotate it a little bit. And that's what's really great about having a variable ND. My hands are absolutely frozen right now. I'm gonna put some of this stuff back just so I don't get more snow on it or step on it on accident. So that's pretty much it when it comes to ND filters. Really basic tutorial, and hopefully that was a good example on why you should have an ND filter versus the footage you can get without one. If you tried to bring a drone like this to a shoot in broad daylight with no ND filter and you are getting paid for that, well, the company might be pretty disappointed with you because the footage will look choppy on the computer in the final production. There are ways around it to smooth it out with external programs, but it's better to get it done right in the camera, even if you just get the basic DJI filters or you get one variable ND filter. 2 to 5 should honestly be good enough in most situations. But other than that, I could just ramble on. Okay, I'm gonna go warm up my hands. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like the Avata footage, I just made a review on that drone. Check it out right here. And one thing is, even Scott said, man, that drone is loud. It's a very loud drone. But anyway, watch my full review right here. See ya.